Hello and welcome to my cake kitchen. In this video I'm going to be showing you how I made this rectangular 12 by 10 inch vertical standing cake without internal structures or support, which was a huge risk. However, for added value, I'm going to be taking you through the entire process of making this cake, explaining why I took the risk and how I achieved this beautiful cake presented on a fondant covered board decorated with pre-made decorative balls, handcrafted fondant details including a teddy bear. So without having to waste your time, let's jump right in. For this cake, I baked two 12 by 9 inch cakes, which I leveled solely to rid of the crust on top and on the bottom parts. The cakes were baked 24 hours earlier and left on a countertop to settle the crumb before use. This supports a better stacking experience without the cake crumbling. As a two-layered cake though, knowing that the cake was going to be vertically standing without any internal structures meant I needed the cake layers to be thicker instead of thinner. After taking off the crusts, the cakes were prepped for filling. On my work table, the cake is filled with French buttercream, an easy to make and adaptable buttercream recipe which I created on this channel. Links to both the cake sponge and buttercream recipes, including any additional information, are in the description box for you. When filling the cake, buttercream is spread on the bottom layer and leveled out before the second layer of cake is placed, but the cake is to be handled delicately, hence a board is used to slide the second layer of cake on top to stop the cake falling apart. Notice though that there are broken bits resulting from leveling. I realize now I should have chilled the cake first before leveling, but the hollow parts will be filled out during the decorating process. The cake layers are pressed together and checked for alignment before the cake is set to chill. The cake is returned to be trimmed, which is something I love. And if you're new to this channel, hello and welcome. My name is Gladys. I'm a baker and cake artist, and over here I make simple, informative tutorials to help you navigate cake decorating easily. As a result, my cakes are informative, broken down into understandable processes, which should help you achieve success when undertaking your cake decorating project. Over here, I love to trim my cakes, and one of the reasons is that it rids of the crust, giving a clean slice when the cake is cut into. Now trimming done, it's time to crumb coat the cake, starting with some red colored ganache. There isn't an exact reason for using red, except I had some leftover ganache from a cake earlier that I wanted to reuse. I also filled in the broken parts of the cake, but this part of the decorating process was slightly tricky, which I'll explain in a bit. The red ganache was followed by plain colored ganache, after which the cake was left to chill for 20 minutes. The cake is then returned for the edges to be trimmed and any stray hanging ganache is removed. It is then completely covered in another layer of ganache from side to side, ensuring each of the four sides of the cake is polished by scraping off any excess before the corners are trimmed. Covering cakes with angles and lines can be difficult, but knowing how to do that with skill and patience will assist great results. There's a hexagon cake I made linked up here for your convenience. The video is packed with foolproof tips to help you achieve a polished looking cake with clean lines. Our cake is now to be covered in layers of multi-tones of pink and white colored ganache, but there isn't exactly a theme or method to this. The intention is just to spread the ganache sparingly in layers, starting with a deeper color of pink, then a lighter pink, followed by whites in between. After applying the ganache though, the cake is left to chill and returned to be scraped clean, but I'm having difficulty getting the technique to work as right as I would have liked it. The issues with this cake though started long before I even baked it. Firstly, the cake belongs to a friend and a loyal customer who's always been supportive of my business. So when she reached out for a cake, the cake she actually wanted wasn't this one. It was a different one, but the time of the order left little time to make that cake. So after a few considerations, she opted for this cake right here that I've linked up for you to check out. This was made for another friend of mine, and when she chose this particular cake, she actually asked that I recreated it slightly. So with that in mind, I baked the cake only to realize that the board that was going to assist in forming the cake was a 10 by 12. My tins were 9 by 12. This meant the gap between the board and cake was going to be a little wider than I would have liked it. So I decided to fill the gaps with cake pop mix, and whilst this helped in the beginning, when it came to crumb coating the cake, the ganache wouldn't stick easily. I also had the worry of the cake standing vertically as I hadn't organized properly for internal structures. So I decided to raise the ratio of my white chocolate ganache from the usual 3:1 ratio to 4.5:1. This meant the cake was eventually covered in a solid layer of chocolate ganache, which is why I was able to stand it up vertically without any structures. And whilst that in the immediate time solved my structural concerns, it was incredibly difficult to scrape the cake clean, as you can see here. After getting a fair amount of the ganache removed, I took out the plastic covered top board so I could cover the top side of the cake. I used the double board method, which is very much like using ganache disc. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I have a few tutorials linked below, one of which is up here for you to check out after watching this video. With the cake board gone, the same technique for covering the cake in layers of ganache is used again, starting with plain, then pink, then white colored ganache. This is also spread to cover the red base color from crumb coating. Any excess is then removed, and just in case I forgot to mention, the same method used here is the technique used in the hexagon cake cited earlier, which is a lot more detailed, so I encourage you to check that video out. Whilst covering the cake, I realized the consistency of the ganache was posing a problem, as I explained earlier, and this was proving rather difficult for achieving a cleanly polished cake. So I gave up on the original idea of a cleanly polished cake and made use of the challenges presented, settling for an unpolished whitewash effect. The cake was flipped over and the bottom board removed, and the cake covered with pink ganache first, then layers of plain and light. Any excess scraped clean, and we now have a textured whitewash type of cake that I didn't plan for, but to enhance the texture on the cake I decided on stenciling. A stencil is placed on the cake and ganache spread over, removing any excess using a scraper. I have a few videos on the subject of stenciling, some of which are linked below in the description box for you. After each side of the cake is stenciled, the cake is left to chill in between, and stenciling continues until the cake is completely covered. The cake is then left to set all together before it is returned to be stood up vertically, which is now set for finishing touches. Whilst the cake is displayed on the fondant covered board, the back of the cake is also stenciled. Again, a stencil is attached to the cake first, then a soft consistency of ganache is applied and scraped clean. When certain the stencil pattern is imprinted, the stencil is peeled to reveal the design. To keep the fondant board clean though while stenciling, a good tip is to cover it in cling film or use a tea towel. With the stencil complete, a palette knife is used to add texture by dabbing some ganache around the cake to complement the unpolished texture of the ganache layers. The cake seems to have evolved from a textured whitewash type of cake to an unpolished stone looking effect, but whatever this is, I am loving the look of this cake. Next, gold leaf is added, which is dabbed into place using a fluffy brush. This is also followed by some dabbing on the cake and a quick brushing to tidy up the cake. The base of the cake is a little hollow, so I filled that in with some ganache and used a scraper to clean any excess. With that done, the cake is all ready for decorations. For decorative elements, I have these multi-colored pink and gold balls, flowers, handcrafted fondant rainbows, and a teddy bear. The stalk of the flowers will be replaced with toothpicks to make them food safe. Our cake is brought back and the decorations are added starting from the top corner. Some of the gold and pink balls are pinned to the corner and a rainbow is put in front of the cake. The initial cake, which remains a reference point for this cake, had limited decorative elements, hence the back of that cake was bare. I didn't want to repeat the same mistake with this cake, so I decided decorations were to be attached on both the front and back sides of this cake. Adding decorations to a cake is the part of the process that one can freely allow room for creativity. So I wasn't quite particular and just added the element as I saw fit. The fondant teddy bear was initially supposed to be placed atop the cake, but after a back and forth in my mind, I placed it sitting in front of the cake. I also added a few balls sparingly to fill in the surface of both the front and the back, but the star of the decorative element is the custom acrylic name tag displayed in front of the cake. A final brushing to clean any bits of the cake, and a steamer is out to polish the cake, and that's it all done. Beautifully presented as a pink and white colored first birthday cake with decorative elements, including a custom name tag from Bend Island Occasions. I have certainly had some challenges with this cake, and through the challenges and the troubles, we've got there in the end, and I'm pleased to have you along the journey. Hopefully you have yourself some new tips to undertake your own cake decorating with so much confidence. It's a pleasure to have you. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.